Hello everybody, welcome to episode 44 of the COFFEECLUB pod. We're getting it in this week, a little bit delayed. I don't think we ever thought we were going to miss a week because we've been going strong with that, but obviously this week, World Champs, we're all in Eugene, a lot of craziness happening, so we have to delay it a couple of days, but we're back here in Boulder, or at least Ollie and I are. George's still in Eugene, so he's not going to be on this one, but we'll get him on. He'll be back here next week, obviously, to catch up and all that, but so for this one, we're kind of going to be focusing, obviously, on Ollie's experience at Eugene, the good, the bad, the ugly, etc. We'll get into that. My mother's around. She really wants to be on the podcast, so she'll be here as well. So we'll get the boring stuff out of the way first, which is me. So a little Morgan update. So I think I was meant to race last week, and then I had a hamstring thing. So pretty much I'm just getting my body right. Hamstring thing, then I had a foot thing. Pretty same old, but now I'm actually doing good now. I think I'll be back racing next week. So we'll talk about it in the next episode. But things are looking good. Did a workout with the boys this morning.
Looks pretty good to me.
Yeah, I felt all right. Yeah. So that was good. But now that's out of the way. Eugene World Champs. It's everything's been leading up to it, obviously. I would say in many ways it probably lived up to the hype. I guess we have a different perspective on it, not being just a pure fan or anything like that. What I can say is by the time we left Eugene, I was sick of track and field, wanted to be the heck out of there because it just takes a lot out of you, I think, especially when you're so close to it. And I mean, it was amazing, I think, when I was there, experiencing it all. But yeah, it's these 10-day World Champs meets, there's still a few days left of it. Man, it catches up to you. But yeah, so Ollie, I don't know, where do you want to start with the saga of Ollie Hoare?
My first World Championships, so it was pretty exciting. Even to have it in the US was pretty awesome too, because it kind of feels like a home field thing for me. And I guess we're going through kind of the whole situation with Worlds was I felt like it was too stretched out. I think if it was more condensed, it'd be much more exciting. Even watching it now after getting back, watching the 5Ks, it's just so spread out. It's like a half an hour between races. It's just a lot of spread out time where you just kind of lose focus. But my experience was interesting. I went in with a lot of expectations. I'd been running so well. Training had been amazing. Preparation, credit to Dathan and the team for getting me to the point where I thought I was in a real contention, not just to medal, but to come out with a win. But it was obviously my first World Champs, and you have to not skip rounds. You got to get through each round. And for me, I went through the first round. I felt very, very comfortable, pretty confident. I won that heat, which was I think the first time I've won a championship round.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess you haven't raced that many.
No, because Olympics was the only other one that I've done. And then going to the semi-final was pretty stacked. And
yeah, I'll set the scene on that. It was, I think everyone knows that they were super stacked, and we get the heats or the semis the day before it or whatever. After Ollie ran the heats, they were on back-to-back days, and Ollie was in heat 1, and you just look at the list, and it was crazy good. And obviously at the time, I think you look at it and you're like, yeah, Ollie, your heat is really good, but you're not going to make a big deal out of it because you don't want to. And especially when you had the mindset that I think you had, which is, well, if I'm good enough to medal, then I'm good enough to make it through my heat, no matter how hard it is. Definitely. You know what I mean? Because that's how I felt. But then after, it's yeah, shit, bro. Your heat was really fucking hard.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and that's just the way it goes. It was pretty top heavy in the women's as semi-final for 1500 too. And that's just the way it goes. It's not. Sometimes you get the luck of the draw. It's the same with the dreaded first heat of the 5K, which we'll get into a bit later. But you had the 3 Tokyo medalists. You had the world indoor champ. You got to compete with those guys and they know how to race. And I didn't tactically race that race very well. I kept moving around, expending too much energy, worrying about other people and just wasting a lot of energy just through that race. And then the last I think 150, I got myself in a position that I wanted to be in the entire race, and by then it was just I had no legs, and I really just did not finish the race I wanted to, and I didn't qualify for the final. And that was really tough because it was 100% on me as an athlete and as a racer. Like my support team of like the OEC, Jason, everyone that was there had been fantastic to lead up. Like I was in the best hands possible. I just didn't deliver on the day, and like when you take that personally, it's quite hard and embarrassing when you're walking through and you see all these people and they give you, you know, the same thing of like, oh, I'm sorry that you didn't make it through, and then the same response of me, you know, kind of explaining what happened. And after doing it like 500 times.
Yeah, well, I told Ollie this is going to be the last time. And then after this, I would have liked to get this podcast done earlier because you just want to move on.
Yeah, and that's like, that was the thing for me. It was very hard to move on. And it was tough because I had such high ambition and in this leading up to this World Champs, and I felt overly confident. And that might have led me to struggle a little bit afterwards with just the realization that I wasn't good enough to make the final, and I didn't race the semi-final as well as I did. And there's no excuses. It's just I had a bad race and I didn't tactically perform well. But you got to take what you can out of it, and that's the plan for me, is to turn the page and learn from that mistake. And hopefully, you know, I find myself learning and developing that I don't put myself in a position to make silly errors tactically. But it was, I had a great support system. It was very tough the next few days after, because I had fans and employees coming up to me saying, "Are you excited for the final?" Thinking that I actually made it.
That was the worst when I was with you, and people would say that to you, either just not realizing, or people...
They just don't know.
A couple of people thought you were Stuart McSwain,
yeah,
I think.
And, and that was a bit of embarrassing for them when I had to say, like, no, I didn't make it. Like, it was very clear I didn't make it. Like, I finished 10th in the semi. It wasn't, like, close at all. So that was kind of hard to swallow, but I mean, I had a great support system. So it was just learning from it.
What did we do? How many episodes of The Office did we watch?
Oh, like 40,000.
Yeah, we watched a lot of Office. We just hung out, didn't go to the track too much because, after getting those types of, just having the same conversations and all that stuff, it's just, I think when you put so much into it mentally and then it doesn't go that way, it's like you just want to be able to move on.
And it was very hard watching that final, because that was like the final that I would love to be in, because it was raced the way I thought it was going to be raced. And big shout out to Jake Whiteman, because the guy, particularly after Oslo, he was like just an amazing bloke. Really nice, really genuine. And obviously, like, when somebody wins a world championship like that, all of a sudden everyone's Jake Whiteman fans. But
couldn't be happier for him.
Yeah, he's a great bloke, and he's been so, like, just a nice person to have around, and a good person to have around in that environment. He's just really positive and great person. So for him to get that win and commit like that and have the race tactically go that way is just awesome. So super happy for him. And but it's hard to watch, and hopefully that fire is in me, and I can go into Com Games, which is like a week away, I leave.
Yeah, you leave pretty soon.
Another global championship, which is another, like, a very unique opportunity, and that for me is hopefully where I can focus on my mistakes and try and implement them earlier on. But I actually have a question for you, Morgan, because you watched my race.
I did.
What was your analysis on it? Because, like, you probably thought, like, you probably, because interesting, because you've seen my progression, and what do you think that I should do better leading into?
Now, I think you have a lot of tools in your toolbox, I guess you would say.
Ollie's toolbox.
Ollie's toolbox is pretty full of tools, but I think probably if there was any area where you were more vulnerable, it's obviously going to be a slower race, because that just lets so much more people into it and so much more chance. Yeah. And when you're in such a stacked heat and it's a slow race and it's a big pack of people, it's going to be hard. So once Jakob slowed it down, I was like, all right, that's not ideal, but also I still wasn't worried at all, because I'm like, Ollie can handle this for sure. He can do it. But I was getting a little bit worried when I could tell that you really wanted to be on the outside shoulder of whoever was leading. And there was a couple of moments where, because it was slow, people would come around. People were trying to have the best positioning, because that's the spot that everyone wants, really. Yeah. That's probably the ideal spot, unless you're someone who's pretty confident leading, which, I mean, you are that as well, but I think in this race you felt most comfortable trying to be on the outside shoulder of whoever was leading, which was Jakob for most of it. I think maybe some other guys for a bit of it, but mostly Jakob. Great spot. But yeah, so the issue was that there was competition for that spot. Like Charles came around at one point, and you kind of get funneled to the back, and then you have to put in a bit of a move to get back to the spot. And I think you did that maybe at least once, maybe twice throughout the race, like getting back to that spot. And that was making me nervous, because then I'm looking at who's sitting in the pack behind you, and you have, Josh Kerr, Mario, just everyone that was in it were just sitting, and they weren't moving at all. They were just running a pretty consistent pace, and a pace that was obviously pretty comfortable for them.
Yeah.
So then, like, when you get to the last lap, like, you were in a great spot with 200 to go, whatever, but then you just see how many bodies are lining up behind you for that final kick down the 100, and that's when it's like, like this isn't going to be like super simple run away with it. And then you could just see the guys behind you just hadn't expended the same energy, and then the kick in the last 100 was very aggressive, like sudden change of pace, and that was when it was like shit. So
yeah.
And like obviously the guys behind you were amazing. Even someone like our new teammate Mario. I mean, coming fourth and running
3:30.2 as a collegiate. It's pretty impressive. So like, pretty cool to have him.
Yeah, that's
on
gonna
the
be
team. So
cool.
Shout out to Mario. It was amazing.
Definitely shout out to him. He is a #heavy hitter.
#heavy hitter.
He did ask me about that. He is for sure. But yeah, I just interpret it like just I don't know if you would say you're overconfident in a way. I think you're very confident in your strength, as you should be, but I think it's almost a rule that in a 1500 you can only make so many moves, and that's like what's going to use up a lot of energy. Like you want to just keep it to like one move ideally if you can, and so that's kind of what made me nervous. But then looking back on it, I think that's probably the lesson that you're going to take away, is that I mean, I know after you're kicking yourself because you're like, man, I would have been fine if I had just either sat back or gone to the front, like picked one of those two. And like if you'd run that from the front, like you could have done it, and that probably would have been, using less energy, and it would have worked out well. It's even like if you watch the way Josh Kerr ran it, even with 100 to go, you were like, man, Josh Kerr is really far back. But then you just realize like he had just chilled the whole time, so he was less nervous. I mean, maybe he was nervous at the time, but like watching it, I was nervous. I was like, what's he going to do? But then he just storms through and gets it done. So I think you have a lot of experiences, but this is just another experience which is maybe slightly different to some of your other ones, especially now that you're so good and you have a target on your back. I think honestly, from Jakob's perspective, I think he was probably looking at you as the biggest threat. So you had a bit of a target on your back, and I think that changes the way that you race a bit and all that. So I think it's just another slight learning lesson now that you've kind of reached this level. Yeah. And I don't think you'll probably make that mistake again.
Well, that's the plan. I mean, like you gotta put it into fruition, but it's been nice to be able to, it sucked, but it's been nice to be able to like reassess where you are, and things happen for a reason, I believe, in this sport. So you can either really repress it and not think about it, or try and just take it in and say like, I never want to feel like that again. I want to make sure that that I run the race as best I possibly can. If I don't make it off the best possible race I can run, then you should be content with that. And I just I know I stuffed up, but anyway, let's close that chapter. But yeah, like that was my World Champs experience, and I definitely didn't, like, particularly with the amount of running and racing I've done against so many incredible athletes in this event, I keep forgetting that's my first World Champs.
Yeah, it is.
That's my only second time running, or third time, sorry, World Indoors, wearing the US uniform, and it's
the US uniform?
The Australian uniform. Sorry, I apologize. It's a great privilege to wear my green and gold, and I've been wanting to do it since I was little, and I definitely had some time to meditate on it and to think about it, and it's been great having you, Morgan, and George and Joe, guys that like I've been able to be around for the past 2 years to really put it into perspective. But that was my World Champs, and I'll definitely learn from it a lot. But before we get your mum out here and get her to roast you on the pod, we talked a lot about Haywood and how this was going to pull off. Like, how was it going to go? Like, how was World Champs going to be run? What, you were there and I was there. We kind of saw it happen. What were your takeaways from it? Like,
I think it was pretty amazing. And to be fair, it's not like I went to a ton of it, but I think it was pretty amazing. I think yeah, a lot of people saved up to go. Like we were saying, like this is probably what people were doing earlier in the year. I think a lot of people saved up to go out to the World Champs, and I think, yeah, as I said earlier, I do think it's annoying that these track events are still not run in a way that's the most viewer friendly. There's just so much dead time, and because you compare it to say NCAA's, where within a 2-hour, 3-hour window, there's bang, 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 back to back, amazing performances, constant action. You just imagine trying to do that. So if World Champs was somehow condensed into a 3-day or 4-day meet, it would just be the craziest thing ever. And obviously there's reasons they don't do that. So that would probably be my one frustration, is when I would go to the track, it'd be just for like one event. You know, it's not like I'm going to watch all these heats and all that. Like I was going to say watch Joe run in the 10K or whatever. But when you're actually there and the action is happening, it was pretty amazing. And there were so many great fans out there. Shout out to all the Coffee Club fans that got a sticker and that came and got a picture and stuff. It was really, you could tell you were in Tracktown, USA, not to be too cliched, and that all the people that were like massive track fans were out there. So being a part of that was pretty sweet. I think we didn't get to partake in like too much extra stuff, but it looks like there's a lot of cool stuff happening there with the new generation guys and all that. Obviously that's their backyard, so
they're doing a great job
taking advantage of that. Will this make a difference on the popularity of this sport in America? I would say probably not.
Definitely not.
I think the breaking through, if you want to break through in that way, I think
you have to set it up differently.
I think bigger changes have to happen. I mean, maybe it will have some impact, but I don't know.
I definitely agree. Like, I think I went in a bit pessimistic, but when I went out and like saw that the stadiums were never full, which if you look at, no offense to Eugene, if you look at London, they were full and they were bigger stadiums. So is it the access to Eugene? Probably. Is it the access to expenses with like accommodation and flights? Probably. But people turned up. There was a lot of people there, and a lot of people had signs. There were massive roars for every individual, including like a lot of big cheers for the Americans, which is fantastic. This is why you have those home championships. That's why you put so much emphasis and money into it. You want your American team to get that response, and it was great, I thought, in that regard. But I agree that spacing out of the meet, you lose interest. Like the 100-meter final was like the first section of a few days into the championship.
It was on day 2, I think.
Day 2.
It was either day 2 or day 3.
Day 3, yeah. So like the 100 final was done, and that's one of the biggest events of the meet. And then you have so many more races, so many more athletes waiting. And the problem with that is I think people start to lose a bit of interest. I mean, not true track fans, but like if you're trying to gauge in the population, particularly the nation of the United States of America, you need to keep it. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, if you're trying to sell it as a product of pure entertainment, like pure entertainment. If that's the aspect that you're looking at it from, it's still, there are definitely some changes. Was it pretty when you were on the track? Was the crowd pretty loud, pretty cool vibes and all that?
I have to be honest, not as loud as Oslo.
Really?
Which is obvious. But it was loud. It was great. I mean, I thought the environment was great. It did honestly feel like in call room and in general, because I'd raced there a lot through my college career and professional career. Yeah, it just felt the same.
Way more chill than probably any other world champ.
There was no, obviously you have the feeling of it being world champs, but you're so familiar with the place. It was just very different. It just felt like world champs, you know.
Yeah.
It just felt like Haywood race, but I thought they did a great job. The media, I thought, was fantastic. But yeah, it's just hard. Like, you're trying to, what's Lord Coe said about trying to get the American fan base coming in. I just don't think they're going to achieve that at all with the way it was run. Yeah. Because it's just no different. And like, the people that are track fans in the US will be there.
Yeah,
but if you're trying to engage a whole audience about like a world championship of this sport, they didn't like change much or create an environment.
Well, it was, I don't even know. Because it was, you saw on, this is a relatively dead time for sports, but there was the Open, like the golf tournament was on, and that was getting, for a general population, like on the papers and stuff, that was getting a lot more attention, and that was overlapping with like when you were racing, so that was like the 100 meters and like some real big stuff. So still a long way to go. Obviously golf is massive, so that's a tough competitor, but
very tough competitor. But you know, hopefully like they learn a lot. Well, I guess hopefully they've been doing this for so long. maybe they'll take away a lot of lessons from this meet, and we'll be able to kind of cultivate much more of a track basis on, I don't know, just getting the sport more exciting about it.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll bring Mum in there. We'll
Bring Mummy McDonald.
Yeah. All right. And we are back from our break with our big star guest on today. Flew her in all the way from Australia, going on the Coffee Club expenses.
That's good.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
rolls.
Thank you.
Surprise, I paid for your trip. Psych. But yeah, this is my mother. She created me and did all that stuff. Her name is Adrienne Torda. We call her 80. Mom, how you doing?
Hi. My pleasure to be here. Thanks, boys. I'm doing just fine. It's very warm here as opposed to where I'm living, which is very wet and cold at the moment.
Yeah, Mum's been out here getting a little altitude training in. She's been crushing it. She did. How far did you go this morning?
Not very far.
Really?
Well, not as far as I wanted to. But yesterday I did my first hard workout in a couple of weeks, so I was a bit sore today.
You threw up at the end of it, didn't you?
I threw up a little bit yesterday, yes.
It's a great workout.
Mm-hmm.
Love to hear it. That's good for the sport.
Yeah. But just we had Kate the Great on. Obviously, we'll try to get George's mum, the beautiful Josie, on as well. Just doing the mothers of Coffee Club, just so you guys can see how we came to be. But
why we are the way we are.
Yeah, so we can blame them for all our problems, our deep-seated issues that we get out on the podcast. You guys can probably tell we got a lot of those. But yeah, we don't really have a structure to this. Like, we didn't really for Ollie's mother either. But I think, Ollie, do you want to ask me, Mom, any questions?
I do.
Anything embarrassing?
So, firstly, I would like to let's introduce the audience to. So, what do you do?
Okay, so I'm a doctor. I'm actually an infectious diseases doctor, so I've been a bit busy during COVID, but I've transitioned in my role to an academic, so I now work in
COVID.
No.
She solved it. She got the cure.
But every time there is a cure, I roll my eyes and go, no, that's not the cure. I work in a university. I work in a faculty of medicine and health where I'm the head of a big clinical school.
So pretty impressive. So my first question is, Morgan. So he went into. So how does it come for Morgan to be who he is with running and with his personality? And is there anything, any kind of deep dive into the Morgan McDonald that people don't know? But also we need a bit of dirt, I think, as well. If you have any funny stories of Morgan growing up, tell us about him growing up and his how he's transitioned into running.
Okay, so Morgan's one of 4 children, and he basically cried for the first 11 months of his life until he was able to get up and start walking and running, and then he was suddenly happy. And we should have realised then that maybe that was a sign, but we didn't. But he was pretty active, and he actually started with soccer and played soccer at a high level. And one day out at New South Wales Soccer, they were doing the beep test, where they basically test how, it's a VO2 max kind of surrogate. And all the other children had kind of left and sat down, and the guys running it just kind of watched Morgan running up and down for about 10 extra minutes. And he got to a level that basically Cadell Evans, cyclists had got to, and they went, he's going to be a good cross-country runner. And so then we went, maybe he should do cross-country as well as soccer.
Oh, there you go. So that's where it came from. It was the beep test, and Cadell Evans was shaking in his boots because Morgan was starting to come up on him. So obviously, I mean, I know personally, but I'm sure a lot of people do too, that Morgan was quite dangerous on the cross-country courses growing up. How was that like for you as a parent? Like, because I think he won a lot of national titles. How, as a mother, do you like keep him interested in the sport, like he's not getting bored from just winning, but also how keep him like less pressure on him? Like, did you have any role to play in kind of his journey with that? Because he was quite successful straight away. Yeah,
I think we were the opposite of pushy parents. We love sport, but we'd always been very average at it. Well, I should say...
I was going to say, you're pretty good at running as well, from what I've seen.
Well, I only started after Morgan started, so I didn't know back then. And his father was a junior Australian kayaking champion, so he did have a bit of a good ticker. But we weren't just into running, and I agree with you that running can be a difficult sport for a teenager because it's always hard. And
it's super boring.
And it's super boring. So, he did do soccer for a long time, which was much more of a fun team sport. He also did dance. dance. He loved doing dance. If you look really hard, you can probably still find some YouTube videos of him shuffling and doing sea walking.
The sea walking. So you like those videos? Do you watch them a lot? Or?
I do.
I like them as well. I think they're amazing talent, hidden gems of Morgan's background.
If you, I will say, I have kept those a secret from most of the world. But if you do want to find them, YouTube. My name was Makazi.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, that's
Makazi
it.
13.
Yeah, Mac is 1313 is my original YouTube account. Makazi Seawalk. If you search that, you might find some little gems hidden on YouTube from back in the day.
You will not be disappointed. I'm just saying that to fans of Morgan. You will not be disappointed. But
I look at them and I'm surprised I let him just go out there and dance on the street when he was like 12. He could have got run over at any time. But anyway, they're quite cute.
I thought they were adorable, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then his success, and he played rep soccer.
Yep.
He went to it's not as good as Trinity, but he went to Newington, which is a brother school of Trinity.
Yep.
We went through this with my mum. But what was his journey to that? Because he was at Rose Bay.
No, Randwick.
Randwick.
It's my primary school.
You were at Randwick Primary School.
Yeah.
And he went from there to a very, very, I would say, very nurturing and very competitive environment to Newington. How do you think that, as a parent, because my mum was very, very proud of Newington and what the development was. Were you the same with Newington and Morgan, kind of his journey with them?
Yep. Well, even before that, it really wasn't on our radar initially, and we weren't sure where he was going to go to school. We even looked at some sports schools, and one of the ones we looked at, they said, look, his soccer is great, but we actually would like him for his running. Yeah. And Morgan said to them, do you study Shakespeare here? And they said no. And
that doesn't sound like me.
he was quite intellectual as a 12-year-old.
Oh, yeah.
And then Newington actually had this combined scholarship that had sport, leadership and academics. And so that kind of suited him, and he decided to go there. And they're what we call a GPS school, or a greater public school. So they had I think 12 schools, something like that
maybe
were
slightly
in there.
less.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good conference of schools, and they have a lot of sport. A lot of good athletes are on scholarships at the different schools. For example, rugby would be the biggest, most prestigious, but a sport like rowing, all those types of sports are really big at these schools.
Yeah.
And he was just lucky in his age group. There were a couple of national champions every weekend that he'd run against in cross country. He never really did track until his latter years there, and he only ever did track as part of the GPS athletics season because we failed miserably at little athletics. It was far too labour intensive for us with 4 kids. We just couldn't organise ourselves. And the one time he did an 800 metres there, he won it but got disqualified because he didn't know how to do it, and he came out of his lane too early.
This is true. I forgot about that.
Yeah,
I did one season of athletics, made it to maybe it was the regional carnivore, and then I think I cut in too early.
Yep, you got disqualified.
Sent home, devastated.
Well, that was the end of Morgan McDonald's 800 career, but his career still lived on, and he was very successful. He was someone that I definitely looked up to as a runner in the sport. When he was making that transition to college, how did that conversation go about because obviously there's a lot of thought going into, because he was one of the, for me, probably the first ones to kind of, there was obviously a scattering of others that have already been over there, but he was the first one for me that kind of started this big downpour of Aussies going over. What was the conversation between your family and Morgan about that decision moving forward?
I think, we looked at the US system and saw it as being a really good transition between being a junior athlete to a senior athlete, and it was something that they did much better over here than we perhaps had avenues for in Australia, where students who went to university basically had to juggle their sport and their academics, and it was quite tricky for them. So he was interested in that transition, and we came over here and we met a few schools, and he was immediately taken, both with the athletes who looked after him really well at Wisconsin as well as the coaches. Yeah.
No, I had the same feeling as well. With Morgan was already there, and it was quite a cool feeling. Wisconsin definitely offered that great vibe that you kind of want to get out of the college system. Mm-hmm. But because you have 3 other lovely children, but then Morgan leaving to college, was that difficult for you guys? Did you guys find that very tough, or you're like, this is easy, he's out of our hands, we don't have to worry about him anymore, no more crying, we can move on? How was that for you as a mum, letting him go to a different country to do pretty much everything?
I've got to say that thanks to New South Wales Soccer, when we'd been on tour with them, they'd always said, parents, you can come, not come, but you're not to interfere with what your kids do. They have to get themselves organised, dressed, packed every single day. So he was very independent from doing a couple of tours with soccer. And he actually came over for World Junior Championships, which were in Eugene, and we just left him here. I think that was maybe 3 or 6 weeks before college started.
Yeah, it was a good month or so.
Yeah, and he was really lucky in that the people in Wisconsin there were a couple of people who just said, he can come and stay with us. So he went and stayed on...
stayed at the farm.
At the farm. With
Tyson Meehee, my freshman year roommate.
Yep, Tyson's been a guest on the podcast, so you've all met him. So they were just the most lovely family. I think you probably had to help with the farm work, did you?
I did. I don't know if you guys remember, there was a couple of incidents there which maybe worried you guys a little bit. Oh
yeah, he did manage to get a really bad cut to his face within the first week of being here that we almost had to organise a plastic surgeon to fix up, but you can't see it now. You've healed well. You
guys were probably pretty concerned when I said I shot myself. I don't know how I said it to you, but yeah, I scoped myself in the face with a shotgun.
Which was a very, very funny time.
Yeah.
First and last time I think he's ever been allowed to touch anything like that.
Yeah, no more guns for Morgan.
Yeah, and then he lived at college with Tyson.
Went into
roommate.
the dorms with Tyson, yep.
Yeah, the transition was easy, to be honest. And he actually left us without, I think, being too homesick at all.
Yeah, I was very lucky to have a lot of really good people around me. It was very fun, my class at Wisconsin, because there was so many of us, and you know how it is, being a college kid, there's a lot going on. So
yeah,
I was very lucky to be having such a great time in Wisconsin that it made it a lot easier.
Yeah. And he moved into the house that you ended up moving into, and you know, nobody's ever looked back from that.
No, definitely not. And it was great to get to know you through college, and I felt like I had another mum coming in, which was fantastic. But I think as well now moving... For Morgan had a very, very successful last year in the NCAA, and he was looking at going professional. Were you ever considering that he would come home, or did you think he's going to stay over there? Like, because he obviously, I know from Morgan's fact that he wanted to be a doctor, and you know, like professional running is going to get in the way of that, obviously, because people try and do it, but when you're focusing on something like this where you only get certain limited time. It's very, very tough to be able to put in the amount of effort you have to put in to be a doctor as well as an Olympian and professional athlete. So did you ever think he was coming home? Did you ever have any interaction with him about what he was going to do next, or was he kind of like Morgan's doing Morgan?
No, I think we've always been the kind of parents that let their kids do their own thing and pursue their own passions. And particularly with something like running, you've got to go while you can, because it's not going to be around forever. Yeah. And so long as he can be fit, and the community is really, I think it's such a healthy community. You look after each other both physically and mentally. And so I don't think he's ever been anything but very happy with his choices. Would that be accurate?
Oh, I got some regrets.
You got some regrets? Tell us about your regrets.
No, I don't have any regrets. Should we deep dive? I don't know if we got enough time on here today, but I think both at Wisconsin and being a pro, I don't know. There's not much that compares to just following your dreams.
Not many people get to do that, so
no complaints here.
It's a big privilege. Okay, moving away from that, let's talk about your love for running and how you fell into it, and your achievements in running, because I know there are a lot there, and you've been running quite a bit. When did you first kind of start doing it?
So as I said, you know, we joined a local club, Randwick Botany, as I think you were Randwick. No,
I was Sutherland.
Sutherland.
We're enemies to Randwick.
Oh, enemies, sorry.
We hate each other.
But there was really good Saturday morning cross-country runs, and so rather than standing there doing nothing, I went, okay, I'll just jump in. And then I started training with a group that were raising money to do research into cancer called Can2, and I trained with them and met some really good friends, and then we just continued training, trained with Sweat for a while, as did you. And then we joined Run Crew, and I started training with the coach who I currently train with. Shout out to Tiger. And I know his sons watch this.
Do they really?
Yeah, they do.
This is not age appropriate for them.
I was going to say, how old are they?
I don't know.
But yeah, so like, I mean, Run Crew is massive now, right? Like, and then...
Well, that's the way it is in Australia. For anyone who doesn't know, this probably does exist in different forms here in America, but you don't see it as much compared to where we come from, where it's such a community thing. You have, people like my mum who fall in love with running because of running, but also maybe more so because of all the people and just the fun times, the trips you get to go on everyone. And so we have a training squad, which I think this is the part which people in America might not understand, is that I would train in the same, and Ollie as well. We would train in the same squad that my mum would train in. So we would be at sessions together, and it would get up to what's the biggest they get up to? Do they get up to 100 people?
Oh yeah, on a Saturday morning, maybe not quite, but close to.
Yeah.
And there'll be maybe 4 different. Well, even more than 4 different sessions going concurrently, because they've got a lot of juniors.
Yeah.
They've got, junior girls, junior boys. They've got distance. They've got 800-meter runners.
Yeah. There's a lot of different stuff happening, but at the end of the day, we might be doing similar sessions together. It's pretty funny, and that's just the way it is in Australia. And obviously, at the front, you have some really good guys who we trained with when we were growing up. But then it's just a massive squad of people, so it's pretty cool.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And you've been running some pretty amazing marathons.
Just ran the Gold Coast Marathon. Was that 3 weeks ago now? 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
And you broke your age group record?
Only for New South Wales, so it's just a state record.
Not good enough.
State record, yeah, state record.
Not good enough.
I wanted to break it by more, so I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed with myself.
Well, what time
Ollie.
did you run?
You can take that fuel and move it forward. That's right. We can do it together. But what time did you run?
3:12.
3:12.
It's not bad.
That's pretty good. I've never run a marathon.
Quicker than I've run.
Yeah, I've never. So, so you've loved the sport. You're in the groups and enjoying that community. Do people come up to you and say, "Oh, you're Morgan's mum," and they try and talk to you about college and try and talk to you about getting pro? How do you? Because obviously, that's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
Are you used to it now? Because it probably happened a lot.
It happens a lot more, as you said. After Morgan came over here, a lot more.
Yeah.
Final year students started thinking about coming to the States, and so a lot more queries come through, and because in our squad there's a whole lot of juniors as well, and it is a big move for students, for any young person to commit to travelling halfway across the world for university. So it's very different. Like I said, the whole moving away from home thing that happens here in the States, at home in Australia, most students, if they're going to university in the same town, will actually live at home. Whereas, so the whole culture is very different.
Because we live in a big city.
Yeah, my brother doesn't leave home.
Yeah.
So he didn't do that. He's still at home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. Well, what goals do you have for your marathon? Because I would like to know, and our fans do too, because they can keep up to date with it. What's the plan moving forward?
Okay, so I ran the Gold Coast Marathon, and I got cramps in my calves, first time ever, to the point where the whole calf seized up and the foot was pointed, and I had to stop and stretch it out. So I was hoping to do a sub 3:10. That's the kind of shape I was in. And now I've just got to get back to that shape and keep plugging away. There's another marathon in about 6 weeks. Should be a bit cooler, and so I'm hoping to do a sub 3:10. Just putting it out there as a goal.
That's a good goal. Coffee Club. You're part of the Coffee Club track club now, so
this
is true.
Break my own record.
And when you break that record, Coffee Club will be there to support and endorse you with all that success. Another question I had as well, which I think is interesting. Morgan hadn't been home for a very long time. I think about 3 years, right? Counting.
Still hasn't, yes. Yeah. 2.5 at least.
And a lot had happened in that time. I mean, he's run at World Championships before, but the Olympics was such a big goal. It's a big goal for everyone, and parents can get stressed about it, and it can get very overwhelming. I know my parents, they definitely did. I don't know if all our parents would be the same. You guys might be much more chill, but through that experience from Morgan and what he had to go through, particularly with the resilience he dealt with, what was the reaction like when you guys finally found out? Because you couldn't go and hug him, you couldn't how was that? Because it is a difficult time, because that doesn't usually happen. Most people, most Americans that go and compete, they get the top 3 spot, their parents are right there, they celebrate and they have that moment. Whereas you didn't have that with your son, and having a son that's an Olympian is a very unique thing. And it's how was that reaction, and what is it like now, I guess, dealing with that, because you didn't really have that moment?
Yeah, well, like your mum said, it's really hard not being able to be there and share that.
Yeah.
just having a child go to the Olympics is something you never expect to happen. So you really want to be able to share it. I'm really happy that I was able to share a lot of his NCAA top experiences. I know they're not Olympics, but
they're pretty freaking high. You know?
I think the cross country win and the
that was awesome.
Then the 5K win as well. But we've been to World Athletics a couple of times, and then last year I think the thing was that when he ran we saw that he was a little bit injured and in a lot of pain, and I think, as you know, if you have a result that's not what you want, it's almost more important to be there, and we would have loved to have been there because we know how sad he would have felt afterwards about having an injury and the frustration and the annoyance that brings. But as you say, probably he's developed more resilience not having us there. He's lucky he's got you.
Well, that was the one thing that I think about a lot, because, I mean, not to make this sappy, but our parents do a lot for us, and I know you've done you and Rob have done a lot for Morgan to get him here, and so have my parents. So like to be able to have that pay off and to have your son competing at the Olympic Games is such an amazing, I can imagine, amazing feeling as a parent to deal with, and not to have that interaction with them, not to be able to go. It must have been extremely tough, but I mean, I was lucky that with Morgan, having him around, and he was, I think, hopefully lucky to have me around during that point of our career, because it was a very different and unique time with the Olympics. But luckily, we're both pretty young. We hopefully have a lot more to give. You know, Paris is in 2 years. So
we're planning for Paris.
You guys planning to be there?
Yep. And Budapest, we're planning to be there as well.
Awesome. So there we go. So if you
guys...
guys...
Be there.
Hopefully I'll be there this time.
We don't want to be there without you.
I wasn't competing in Eugene this time. So
so hopefully you guys...
Get back.
Yeah, we'll be around and be able to support him. But
we gotta ask some crazy questions now.
Okay.
Now for Morgan to take it off.
Well, I don't really have any questions. I mean, I was just thinking of some.
Would you like 3 fun facts about Morgan?
I'd love that, actually.
I would like 3 fun facts about myself.
People find Morgan hard to read.
Okay. Okay, fun facts. Okay, I've got one. He got the university medal in physics. No, the school medal. School medal in physics.
That's not a fun fact. That's a boring fact.
That's hilarious.
That's a fun fact.
I think that's he doesn't come across as somebody who'd be amazing at physics, does he?
I thought it was more maths and finance stuff.
Well, that's the same realm. I don't know.
He plays sport left-handed, left-footed, so golf.
No, that's also not true.
What?
You're goofy.
You're left-handed with golf.
I'm
left-handed with golf?
right-footed. So I'm right-footed, but I do stance sports like golf or snowboarding. I do left-footed or goofy.
Left-footed.
Yeah, so he's goofy. He's like me.
Also a pretty boring fact, but yeah.
Okay, fun fact. Okay, he's an experiential learner.
Yeah.
When he was little, we'd say, "Don't jump off that, or you'll break your leg." And he literally at Bronte Playthings, we said that to him. He jumped off. He broke his leg. He got a fracture of his fibula. We said, "Don't pick up that bull ant; it'll bite you." He picked it up, and it bit him, and his hands swelled up. And we used to say, "Don't eat paper. You'll have problems." So he kept eating it, and one Christmas he ended up in hospital because he swallowed a staple.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just writing this down.
Do you remember that? These are actually, now that will come back to me. Do you remember that one time we were in a hotel room and I put the Icy Hot on my balls to see what I felt like? Do you guys remember that? And then I had to go in the shower and put it on cold because it's burning so bad.
Yeah, it was like the Denka Rub.
Denka Rub, the hot one. I put it on there and it really hurt. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
That's why I did it.
All these people will probably not listen to you telling them not do it, because we used to say, "Don't do it," and you wouldn't listen. You had to experience it.
But I did it so they don't have to do it.
Maybe
it was a service.
So you've actually you've been the guy that we should thank for doing all the dumb things that we don't have to do. We know from experience.
There's one.
Thank you for that, Morgs.
Thanks for your service. There's one more story that came to mind out of. It's kind of similar. Do you guys remember that time that we were waiting for a ferry?
This is a bad parent story more than a crazy Morgan story.
Do you remember this one, Dad? Yeah.
So we were standing with a group of our friends, I think from his soccer team, end of season lunch out on a little island in our harbour, and we're all about to get onto a boat. So we're all standing there waiting for the boat to come in. And then Morgan kind of tugged at our shirts or something, and we looked behind and he's standing there. He would have been maybe 10 or something.
Something like that.
Or actually 8, completely wet. And we're like, what happened? What had happened is he'd actually fallen off.
I was trying to jump between
the pier?
Two wooden parts.
And he'd missed and fallen into
And
the
I fell into
harbour.
the ocean.
And we hadn't noticed because, when you drown, it's kind of quiet. Luckily, he hadn't drowned and he'd swum his way back to somewhere on the pier, climbed his way back up. And
I just turned up behind him, just fully wet,
But
in my clothes.
Yeah, this is a bad parent story.
I love that.
guys.
I love that quote. With drowning, you can't. There's no noise. You can't hear anything.
Oh, we felt so bad.
That's hilarious. Well, that is a good story.
So we've got to
that'd be
keep an eye on your children if there
Yeah.
are any parents watching this, which I doubt.
Yeah.
We definitely have parents watching this.
Other than running, what do you think Morgan's going to do with his career? What's your like
Pro swimmer?
pro swimmer?
No,
I can
he's
see
hopeless
that.
at swimming.
I'm the worst. I was
He's
the
the
one.
worst swimmer.
Yeah, when all my siblings, we would all do swim school, I would just stay in the same group and everyone else would move up. I'm really bad at swimming.
He's really bad at swimming. He
I
doesn't
can-
know
I
how
can
to
confirm
breathe.
that, Yeah. He doesn't have a bubble arm.
No, he has none.
What's a bubble arm?
Bubble arm is like the arm like you breathe on.
Oh, yeah, don't
and
have one
and
of
one
those.
other funny story. He's a great dancer, and he was in the choir in primary school. And the choir teacher asked him if he could lip sync rather than
It
sing.
did happen. Because we
Yeah.
were doing an audition
he's
tape.
not a
We
great
might have
singer.
told that story on the show before, I'm not sure. But yeah, we
Yeah.
were doing an audition tape and I was so bad that I had to lip sync. It's pretty brutal because I
It's a brutal thing for a teacher to
I
tell
would love to
an
be a good singer,
8-year-old.
but
Oh yeah, I would too. Honestly, I'd love you to be a
Not-
good singer.
not my destiny.
It's just yeah. Well, yeah. What's the magic ball? Like, what do you think Morgan will do in his future?
Look,
You don't know?
incredibly talented, can do anything he
No,
sets
no.
his
Do you reckon he
mind
could run a
to.
cult?
I
Yeah.
think a cult leader is probably on the
I
cards.
think Coffee Club is kind of like
we're on
starting
our,
to be
we're
a
on our
cult,
way
so-
there.
Yeah.
Just do some
Yeah.
more weird stuff. We could worship Gus. I mean, as you said, that already happened. So
And let's make this clear so everyone knows. Morgan is a middle child. Is that correct?
So he's got an older sister, 20 months older, and then after him, 20 months later, come twins. So
Twins.
essentially middle child.
Because the twins, yeah, obviously it's not. They're not a package. They're both individuals, but they're kind of like a package. Like Morgan
Yeah,
was
in a
kind
way.
of like. Did Morgan have any middle child traits growing up?
what is a middle child?
They
like a
have to
seeking
make
attention.
themselves
Oh, attention
known.
seeking. Yeah, I
Yeah,
had
they
those.
have to make themselves
Because
known.
I just
I
don't
had
feel
those.
like he's like that sort of person. Morgan's like in the corner just staring.
Nah.
at
So
I was at one point.
Morgan always took up about 80% of our parenting, and the other 20% was distributed between the other 3 children. The twins had to learn to do everything for themselves, like put themselves
Do they work together?
Well, yeah,
Very
they
good
do
team.
actually. But they
Very good
became
team.
really good babies because we could never get to them until we'd made sure Morgan was safe and looked after. Because, like I say, he was only 20 months old when they were born. So by the time I'd got him settled and either in a safe spot so I could go and look after them, they'd put themselves back to sleep. So they were really easy. And our first child, she was just a dream child as well.
So
So,
she's the golden child.
yeah, well, they're all golden.
No.
That's nice.
Yeah, well, I'm still high maintenance, so that checks out.
True.
I feel like I'm kind of now the. I don't know, the punching bag, the right term? What would be the assistant? I don't.
Well, for yourself?
No, for you.
Oh, for me?
You muppet.
What do you mean?
Like I look after you
Oh, yeah. Ollie
in
looks
some
after
ways,
me.
like
Yeah.
passively.
We're happy to pass that baton on.
Yeah,
Ollie.
I passively
Someone has
look
to do
after him.
it.
Like I make sure that in the morning he has his space and
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
has his
He's,
routine. You
he's
know?
not a morning person.
No, well he has his system. He do you did you ever experience this at home? Like Morgan will be in his own situation. If he gets disrupted, it ruins the whole
Ollie,
day.
he moved out of home at 17.
So you didn't really
Had to
experience
get
it.
out
I
of
guess
there.
I experienced that now, so that's
Yeah.
that's the thing I can tell you guys.
but we're still very close. I mean,
yeah.
we speak all the time, as you
Yeah.
know. So you luckily get to experience that for us.
Yeah, no, I pass the baton and I am making sure he's
You're
not
dealing with
jumping
it well.
not jumping off wharfs. And,
Ollie's my primary caregiver.
yeah.
It's working
Yeah.
out really well.
Is there anything else you'd like to chat about in the pod?
Oh, look, I just think,
Do you
You-
condone the pod?
what?
Do you condone it or do you?
Oh, I think it's fantastic. And I
Okay.
think
Thanks,
just
Mum.
being here for 2 weeks, we've got to meet random people who have come up and said, oh, I'm a huge fan of the pod. At the coffee shop the other day and at the track today. So I think you're having a good impact on the sport. Definitely good for the sport.
Definitely good for sport. There we go. Look at that. You
Thanks,
heard it here
Mum.
first. That's going to be my ringtone.
Hell yeah. But yeah, I feel like that was a nice little talk. Thank you very much for coming on, Mum.
Thank you very much.
We
My pleasure.
appreciate
Can I
having
just
you
go
here.
now?
Yeah. You can leave whenever you want.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to go. You guys are doing fantastic.
Oh, we're actually about to end it anyway.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, a slightly shorter one today, but We'll be back in full force next week. But yeah, episode 44, I think that's it. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you guys next week.
See you next week.